Comics Coast to Coast is brought to you by patrons like you. If you'd like to help the show out, head on over to patreon.com/comicsc2c and show us a little bit of your love. Your sweet, sweet love. I mean, like $1 worth of love. And we'll take that love and hug it and squeeze it and make it do podcast things that you'll enjoy. So come on, see what happens.
This is Comics Coast to Coast.
Hey folks, this is Comics Coast to Coast, episode number 312, the Scott Brown interview. Before we get to Scott, my name is Joel Duggan. You're used to hearing my voice on the show. What you'll notice is the absence of voices of anybody else. Both Brian and Matt are out for the count this week. Matt is still under the weather. Actually, he's still sick after even 2 weeks now. So best wishes to Matt. Hope you're feeling better soon, buddy. And then Brian has come down with something just immediately, like the day of the interview. He just got smashed. So Brian is also ill. So hit up the Brian Dunaway on Twitter and hit up Matt_the_Wad on Twitter and wish them both good vibes and feel better soon, because I miss them. And it's unfortunate that they're going to miss talking to Scott, but hey, now I get Scott all to myself. Scott Brown, how are you?
I'm fine, sir. How are you?
Good. We're into fall. It's October. I'm not sure where September went.
Sure, absolutely right.
It's completely disappeared. And this is your first time on this show, but you tell me just pre-show that you've listened to the podcast before.
Oh, sure, I have, and a few times. And I know you had my good friend Jay Myers on a little while ago.
Yes, yeah.
The great Jay Myers. So that was exciting to hear him and make fun of him afterwards.
Nice.
Get under his skin a little bit. But no, he's a great guy, great artist. So I really enjoyed that one in particular.
You should give him a hard time if that's not how he introduces himself. Like if he doesn't introduce himself as, "Hi, I'm the great Jay Myers," then there's a problem. Like we have to get on Jay for that.
I get on him pretty much every day. I bother him with just these texts that just get at him and poke fun. But he's a lot of fun, and
nice. And
I enjoy our conversation. So
very, very cool.
Yeah.
I'm glad. Are you a podcast listener like normally?
I am. Terrestrial radio. I don't mean to sound like a puffy elitist or whatever. I'm not into it, and really got into podcasts a while ago. WTF and Bill Burr always makes me laugh, and this is by NPR. I really like to take a taste out of a lot of them, mostly interviews and stuff like that, and
cool.
and really enjoy yours actually. So.
Well, thank you. I'm glad. Again, I'll have to pass it on to Brian and Matt. Sorry they couldn't be here, but because it's one of those things where when we do have someone that's scheduled to come on the show, and they do happen to be someone that also listens to the podcast, part of the expectation is probably to hang out with Matt and Brian and Joel, not just Joel.
Sure.
So I'll do my very best to fill the giant Dunaway shoes and the Matt the Wad chuckles. Those will be harder. I don't have the best Matt impression kind of in my back pocket. Actually, I can't impersonate Brian either. I can just ask you things about do you like craft dinner?
I do. Yes.
Okay, cool. So it's nothing to do with what you do, but it's kind of the kind of question that Brian would normally ask. But speaking of what you do, why don't you take a minute to let the listeners know a little bit about your work and what you do as an artist?
Well, I'm a freelance artist and sometimes writer and designer, living in the southwest Gulf Coast of Florida with my wife and my 2 daughters and my affable pug Linus, and originally from the North Shore of Massachusetts up until about 14 years ago. And so this is where I call home and headquarters and work out of here.
Cool. And you fared okay with the hurricane?
I did. We were extremely blessed and lucky in all of the above, where power flickered a few times, but we were able to watch the local news and to see what was going on and to peek out the door every once in a while and see the insanity that could have been a heck of a lot worse. So we definitely count ourselves blessed, and we made it. So we hunkered down, as they kept saying all day long. So
well, I mean, it's important to stay safe and that sort of thing. And I mean, it's good that the lights stayed on because you can't draw much when the lights are off.
Yeah, no. And, I'm spoiled by the Cintiq that my wife gifted me a few years ago. So to actually sit down and draw something with a pad and a pencil without having the ability to select and move that hand that just looks so horribly and sort of change it. It would have hurt my heart, I think. So, no, we were lucky and it was awesome. It was awesome. So, yeah.
I mean, out of the bag, it sounds like you're doing a lot of digital work right now.
Well, I, up until when my wife surprised me on our wedding anniversary with a Cintiq, and wow. I'd wanted one for so long, and for her to know that she was actually paying attention was pretty amazing, and. So usually all my sketches are done digitally on the Cintiq, but I still really do like to ink, the analog way, right. Print out in blue line and do it that way. A lot of the comics work though is digitally, and I'm still trying to get used to inking digitally. I am not super savvy with how to custom pens like guys like John Lorne can and Friendin and all these guys that can make these brushes look really, really nice and have a nice texture to it. So it's a little awkward for me still. I'm getting better at it, or so I'm told. So it's going better. Things are going a little smoother lately. So it's nice. A good thing. So
it does take a little bit of time to transition from working mostly traditionally or entirely traditionally to having a Cintiq. Even like I worked in animation for years, and we always used tablets, which were you would draw on the mouse pad as opposed to up on the screen. Sure. And even the transition from that, which is still a stylus and still a pen, same company, it had the same tactile feel. So you're like, okay, my muscle memory is okay, but my hand-eye was very different because you get like cramped up with tablets, even drawing on paper, because paper, usually a sketchbook is 8x10. Bristol can sometimes be a little bit bigger, but your mouse pad's even smaller than that. So I find that the biggest change for me with inking and doing any kind of sketching really on a Cintiq was that I had to remember that I get to draw from my shoulder.
Yes, right.
Like did you find that change too?
Absolutely. Especially on my drawing board where I have it attached to, because I don't have a ton of real estate, or I should say I didn't want to have the Cintiq on one desk and my mainline drafting board over here. I like the comfort of having it all right here at the drafting board. So I mounted it on one of those swing arms,
oh, cool.
Armatron or whatever they're called.
Yep.
So automatically sort of the pitch or the incline of the whole thing was definitely steeper than I was used to, but it was all from shoulder, like you're saying. And it took a while to get used to, but definitely it's better now, as everything has gone in getting used to using that. So. Yeah.
So Noah, have you found that practicing with the Cintiq has influenced the way that you ink when you're inking with a pen and brush on paper?
I am much sloppier with my sketching and tend to really slave over inking, even though you could probably look at my stuff and think, wow, I think he drew that in 5 minutes after a weekend bender, because I tend to get a little sloppy or messy, or how I call it organic with my inks and keeping it natural and stuff.
Right.
I still enjoy the whole thing of drawing on paper or using a nib or the brush. I definitely prefer it over digital inking, even though I'm getting more comfortable with the digital inking.
Nice. Yeah, I believe I'm still faster when it comes to traditional inking. I also think that I'm a bit of a perfectionist, so I end up zooming in a lot on a Cintiq when I'm inking something. And you can't.
Oh, sure.
You can't do that on paper. So I find that the mark that I put down on paper tends to be like, that's good enough. But then when I'm doing something digitally, like I can see that it's off by 4 pixels, and I know that I have the ability to nudge it 4 pixels.
Sure. Yeah. No. Right.
It's a trap. I don't have a nice enough printer to do the kind of thing that you do where you print off the blue line. Because I would want to print it off onto something heavier than just like regular computer stock. What do you like? What kind of paper are you printing onto when you're going from your digital roughs to your physical inking?
I tend to draw a little large, and so even a lot of my sketches or character work ends up being an 11 by 17. I believe it's a Strathmore 500 Bristol. So yeah, a couple of years ago, I invested in a large format printer and scanner. So yeah, that's what I usually print out on, and some Epson model. I don't pay attention. I'm not that savvy with what I actually bought. But that's what I print out on blue line. It honestly, I tend to make my blue line really light because I don't want to feel like I'm ever tracing. Because that's what I used to do with a Lightbox, and Lightbox would drive me crazy because I would stiffen up and it would feel like tracing, where just a very light blue line printout where I don't see everything and I still have to think while I'm inking. It feels better to me. Right. It feels more natural. It feels a little more spontaneous, even though everything's already planned out. I mean, there it is on blue line, there it is. But I still want to have happy accidents, I don't want to be all stiff and whatnot. So,
well, and the kind of thing that comes with practice too, like the flick of your wrist is different than the flick of my wrist or somebody else's. So people that follow your work get to know like the way that you draw a curve, the way that you draw texture. When a shirt is folded with a lot of energy, like how does Scott ink it versus somebody else? And I think. I think leaving that kind of choice, like you were saying, the decision making that happens while you're inking, I think is really important. I have the opposite problem. I don't have a light blue kind of like mess or hint to deal with. I have a red smudge because I draw with a red color ace pencil, and I tend to draw very heavily. Like I'm a gorilla when I sketch. So ultimately, there's a bunch of lines, but they're so close together, and I've pressed hard enough that really you can't really pick just one. So you can't trace. Like you still have to do some stuff by just by feel. Like by knowing the character or knowing the pose or like knowing your tool, whatever you're using, pen, brush, etc. While we're speaking with you, actually, I should direct people to your website, which is sonofajoe.com. It's JOE.com. You can also check out, I would suggest Tumblr, and it's SB, it's your initials phonetically, it's ESSBEE71.tumblr.com. So while Scott and I are chatting, you can check out some of his work. And something that I noticed about your particular illustration and comic style when I was going over is that you use a very thin line. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. I'm just saying that it's a lot of stuff that I've seen lately tends to be a little bit bolder. And I think that might be part of the digital trend. But with your stuff, it's a very control and contrived thin line. I can see the decision making happening. What kind of tools do you use when you're doing your traditional stuff?
I really started to enjoy using sort of that dip pen nib, like a G nib. I have a whole box of nibs. I don't even know what they are. I'm sorry, I sound like a goof, but
a nib is I think all we really need, just because it's different than like a mechanical pen or using a brush or a brush pen or something. So and that's the kind of the fun stuff, because like those are the kind of things that you get on a whim or you get as a gift, and you've had them for years, and you go and try them, and then someone's like, "Oh, that's really cool. Where'd you get that?" And you're like, "I don't know."
Exactly.
I mean, anybody that works traditionally, I have so much stuff in my studio, like so many tools. It's hard to remember like where they came from. I've gotten into the habit of like I have a little bit of like green masking tape that I picked up at the dollar store. And if I grab a pen and I happen to like the way that it works, I'll put green masking tape on it so I don't lose it. Because otherwise it's like, where did that go?
That's funny because I do the same thing with the painter's tape. It's the pins that I like, I'll mark with the tape. So that's funny that you say that. Yeah, absolutely.
There's another color tape for the ones that are almost dead that are driving you nuts, and you keep on picking them up. You're like, no, that's got nothing. Why don't I don't throw it out because it's not completely dead. But it still has, because sometimes you want like the hairy line, like you don't want it to be solid, and I find that you can be rougher and more abusive with the pens when you know that it's on its last legs anyway.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to ask you, like, so when you're doing, I mean, I've got the picture of your studio in my head. I've got the big drafting table. I got the Cintiq on the side. Podcast is going. What's your daily routine like? Like, are you up at the Zero Dark Stupid, or are you a late afternoon guy? Like, when do you find that you're the most creative?
I think probably when the house is quiet. I do have, my daughters are 8 and 15 this year. And so they are, the 8-year-old thinks she's 15 and the 15-year-old thinks she's 35 and they can get at it. And so when the house is quiet and the family is asleep, I tend to get most of that day's work done then. Even though I do have to get up usually super early in the morning, to help along with my wife getting the kids out the door. It's a start in the late night into 1 o'clock, 1:30, and then a couple hours of sleep, and then getting up and hating myself and the world, and as we're racing around trying to get them out the door and whatnot. But during the day, I like, if there's stuff to do, plan out, whether it's doing a layout or, some drawings just for myself or working on a pitch. I'm working on a few pitches for my agency right now on my stories.
Cool.
Or just getting work done, or at least the planning stages during that late morning, early afternoon, before you have to go and get the girls or help my wife, or any of the things that really take up the day. And then it's that late night that I can just sit there and, put a podcast on or, some Queen or, classic Van Halen and just ink away or draw or write. So it's usually the day, more planning during the day and more finished work at night when the house is quiet.
Yeah, I find too that when for me, my brain, I need to focus more when I'm sketching and roughing. Inking, I find, as funny as it is, you'd think it would be the other way around, but inking I find is more relaxing. Like I can kind of chill out and ink something.
Oh, absolutely. And I think especially because you had asked earlier, the stuff that sort of the equipment or tools. I've been getting really into brush the last year, where I had spent years just being afraid of it. And I love inking with a brush now, nice, Winsor Newton 7 or whatever brush, inking with a brush for some reason really relaxes me, and it's super sexy. It's cool to ink with a brush. I feel like a pro.
Yeah.
And it slows the brain down and yet lets me think about what's coming up. And so. Yeah, I really enjoy that process. So
nice. So, I mean, you mentioned layouts a little bit earlier. You're working on Fruit Ninja for Dynamite, correct?
I am, yes.
Yeah, cool. So, what's your role on that book?
I'm the cover artist, and each issue is comprised of 3 stories, and I'm the interior artist for 2 of the 3 stories. And it's a 3-issue miniseries that dropped. The first issue dropped a couple of weeks ago.
Nice.
And so I'm the artist, interior artist, and cover artist.
Cool. I mean, I forgive my ignorance. Is that a rare thing? I feel like that's not normally something that an artist would do, both the cover and the inside.
Yeah. I mean, do I find it rare? I wouldn't think so. I mean, this really is my first sort of jump into the pro comics world, or whatever you want to call it. So a lot of my favorite artists I find do interior and the cover as well. But
cool.
I'm happy to do it. All the more the better. So
well, I mean, like I know like independent stuff, people would do everything, but I'm curious with a larger publisher whether they would have different things lined up. So, and I'm guessing Fruit Ninja is an all ages book.
Yes. Yep. Based on probably that billion selling app or whatever you call it. I think I played the app once. So when Nate Cosby approached me to see if I was interested, I was like, wait, it's that app that has no characters in it whatsoever. This will be interesting.
It's funny. That was my thought process too. When I was doing a little bit of research before the interview, I was like, you drew the Fruit Ninja comic. What the heck is the Fruit Ninja comic?
What am I drawing? Pages of like sliced fruit? I mean, I don't know what kind of storytelling that's going to be, but hey, why not? Let's go for it, Nate. You know, Nate's pretty cool, and we had done something together a year before or last year, and I was like, I trust you, Nate. Whatever you think. And there was a animated series done based on the app that I guess they came out last year on YouTube Red, or I'm sorry, I have no idea what it came out on, but it exists, and the drawings are based on that animated those animated shorts.
Right. Okay.
And it's also based on Jetpack Joyride. There's another app that Nate created a comic for that also exists as an animated short. So I do a sort of a one version or an ancient version of the Fruit Ninja for one of the stories that I do, and Jetpack Joyride for the second one.
Cool. I'm looking at the covers right now, and they're a lot of fun.
Thank you. That as you can probably sort of relate to, I think a lot of artists do that. They do something and then look at it a week later and I just go, oh my gosh, why did I make that decision? Or, oh my God, I just totally blew it with that foot or that face. And so it was really interesting. The whole experience has been really interesting because it was just dealing with not only trying to create based on things that are already existing that really wasn't my style. Because I draw, kids with really bad hair or tall, goofy guys with, large mustache. You see my stuff, that I tend to be a little bit more absurd and not controlled. And I had to really control what I did with this.
Yeah.
And it's also my first jump into it. So I'm still trying to get comfortable. And while I'm certainly proud of the work that we all did on one, I think for myself, now that I'm finishing up issue 3, that the second one got better. And then the third one definitely is probably the best one that I've done. So it's been a great experience, and it's been a very much a learning experience and whatnot. So
no, I mean that's how it should be. Like if you're if issue 2 was the same as issue 1, or at least if that's how you felt, then I mean you're not really getting any better. And I think that's. I was talking. Who was I talking to? I think I was talking to Rob Momarts the other day, and he was talking about being self-conscious about certain things about his work, and I'm a huge fan of his work, and I was like, well,
it's beautiful.
Yeah. And then but everything is like, everything's relative, right? I mean, he's hard on himself, and I'm hard on myself, and ultimately, I try to draw a line at like the self-deprecating humor, because really what I'm trying to say is that it's not like I dislike my work. I'm just always trying to improve, so. Oh,
absolutely. Sure.
So the idea is that you're hard in your work, but it's not necessarily a bad thing unless you like, it affects you and you take it home with you. But, to move forward and get better with everything, especially if it's the first time that you've done, a sequential book or something like that, then I think that's just par for the course. It's one of the reasons why I don't go back, and change my web comics. Like I was on a podcasting panel 2 weeks ago at HalCon, and one of the recommendations from the panel was to go back and delete your first set of episodes, so people can't find them on iTunes. Because if someone finds your podcast, the first thing they're going to do is subscribe, and then they're going to go through your archive, and they're going to go all the way back to 3 years ago when you first started, and the first 10 episodes are probably going to suck. And I disagreed with that. I was like, well, yes, the first episodes are not going to be as good as the recent episodes, but if my listener isn't smart enough to know that it was my first crack, then, and it's episode 1, it probably gets better after episode 1.
No, absolutely, sure.
Then that's the, I mean, that would be the kind of listener I would want to retain, you know, is the people that will say, yeah, no, this is, it's, I've listened to the recent one. He obviously gets better with it. And it's the same way with comics. I think, especially for me as an artist, I really enjoy reading through archives of comics for this show and watching the style change, you know, watching the artist discover a new tool, or like, oh, hey, they decided to color this one, and seeing that progression. And I think, you know, if we went back and like always self-edited as opposed to just like accepting what we did and then say, okay, not 100% happy with that, but how can I be closer to 100% happy with the next thing? And I think that's a lot of what drives artists in the first place.
Oh, absolutely. I think, you know, things that I did, I can look at a year ago and go, oh my gosh, what? I really shouldn't have this sitting here where everyone on the World Wide Web can see it. Mm-hmm. And then think, well, that's who I was at that moment. And that's what it represents. And that's fine, because you can see a progression and you can see a growth and you're trying stuff. And yeah, maybe that does suck, but where are you at this point? And I actually, it does help me, because I beat myself up all the time about my style and oh, I could have done that. I should have done this. And I wish I drew like him, you know, and Rob being one of those guys where I'm like, I wish I drew like him. But it's like we've said, it's all about growth and not going back. And even if you can Lucas it, don't Lucas it, just leave it alone. And
yep.
And
it's
you know,
sad that's become a verb now.
Oh, I love it so much. But it's true, and it's who you are at that moment in time, and it's just that beginning, and it's definitely another reminder of growth. And
yeah.
And when I do something that actually makes me happy, I can go, well, hey, it's better than that thing that sucked a year ago. So there you go. You can I can look at it and go, hey, I'm happy now. Yeah. So,
and we live in a world where people know the difference between the 6 or 12 pieces that you've got at the front of your portfolio versus the Instagram feed, you know, like,
oh, sure.
Yeah.
Right.
Like people can tell it like, well, yeah, okay, well that's on his blog, but that's also like, he obviously just did this as a sketch, and it's not, you know, it's meant as an exercise. It's not like, oh, hey, you know, this is one of the covers of his books, you know, like, I mean, and people look at things like that differently. I find it's funny how as widespread as, you know, digital media and social media is, people still look at books very differently than they do social media feeds and Facebook and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So did you go to school for art? Do you have like an illustration diploma or degree, or?
I don't. I'm old. Well, all right. I'm 46. Well, I guess it's old enough that when I was
going to... Don't tell Rob
to...
Momertz you said that.
Is Rob older?
I think he's the same age.
Oh, okay. Then he's old too. Then Rob, I mean, just accept it. If he's actually hearing this, I'm sorry. We're old farts, and that's the way it is. But I did attend a college back in 89, 90, where that art program was much different. What they were teaching in art then compared to now is completely different. And I didn't have the luxury of getting into. You know, I wanted to get into RISD and Mass College of Art, because I'm originally from Massachusetts, and
sure.
And so the college that I went to was close and local, and it had an art program, and I could get in there. But the first day when it was comprised of cutting up, I can remember clearly cutting up magazine pages and putting colors together for some sort of collage. I just was like, get me the, you know, bleep out of here. I can't.
Been there, man.
I got to get out of here. What is this? And so yeah. As far as your question goes, there is no sort of degree in graphic design or anything. Right. It really is self-taught or people that have just ripped off, you know. So and learn that way.
You know, and that's the thing. I mean, like, there's so many resources now online. I mean, everything from an Instagram feed of your favorite artists, you know, to to get your juices flowing and help you solve problems, to online classes, Gumroad tutorials that you can download for the price of a cup of coffee.
Yeah, right.
Like stuff like that is just really, really cool. Something that I haven't found, and I have to confess I haven't looked that hard. A lot of these tutorials that I find are all digital. They're usually digital painting, Photoshop painting, concept art for video games. I have not come across any that I can recall off the top of my head, traditional tutorials where somebody is inking on paper and talking about what they're doing and how they're doing it and all that kind of stuff. Have you found any in your searches?
No, I mean, a lot of the tutorials, because I'm trying to get better at Photoshop and not just Photoshop, but in coloring and color theory and stuff. Sure. And I tend to be a little loose with my coloring and as I try to be with my inking. And that's just another way of cheating. I'm just going to be messy here and try to be cool and use filters. And if it works, it's great. But I do want to have a solid foundation, a solid knowledge. And so, I, like you said, the Gumroad tutorials. I mean, I've bought the Ryan Lang tutorials and a few others that just escape me right now. And so, but the most of the tutorials that I've seen are, the coloring, the coloring variety. And it's going to YouTube really and finding some cool, inking, where I have found inking stuff, where you're watching, let's say, Scotty Young ink a sketch or Bill Sienkiewicz ink a sketch. And it's not so much tutorial. They're not going over, why are they making their decisions? Yeah. You're just having a good time watching them do their thing.
Yeah. And I think, if you can see it clearly, then I think you can still learn quite a bit. Because really, that's really kind of, when you're asking an artist, how they work and what they do, really what you want to be is over their shoulder and just watching them make that mark. Because like ultimately you're looking at a piece by like someone like Scotty Young, and you're just like, how the hell did he draw that tube of mechanical craziness? And you're just like, oh, so that's how. And it's like, he did it in 3 seconds. And it's like, so, but I mean, like, but it's that kind of like, okay, well, he's obviously confident enough to do it. So once you realize, on a sketch or in your sketchbook or something like that, and you try something like that on your own, you're like, oh, so I can achieve the same sort of look. It still looks like my drawing, but I can achieve that texture. My problem was that I was being too careful, right? And I think that without knowing how fast he made the mark, it's hard to tell how it was made. Like when you're just looking at it, in a still image. Although I have to say, like sometimes, I don't know. Sometimes it's one of those things where I'd still like to get a little bit of and this is the interviewer in me, like I'd still like to have a little bit of dialogue, like I'd love to have more talking about what they're doing, but I can't talk while I draw. I'm not sure about you.
No, I can't. I have on a couple of occasions done that, like live Instagram, turn on the camera and ink away. I don't
understand how people do that. How do you hold your phone and ink at the same time?
Well, it's on a mount that I throw on my light.
Okay.
Yeah, it's, even though before I got it, I was holding my phone and inking, and and I'm catching the side of my face or my foot because I'm not paying attention, and then I thought, you need to get a mount like like the big boys have.
The wife sweeps in on your birthday and says, "Look, I saw your Instagram feed and it's terrible. I need happy birthday, anniversary. Here's a mount."
Right, exactly. So it had to be done, and so I've done that live inking just because I'm not working on a top 3 title, and I don't know how many people are actually gonna care if I'm inking on Instagram Live. And but I do have a few folks that actually have asked me to do it, so I started doing it, and they would come on and they would ask me questions. And I just would forget about looking at the screen and thinking afterwards, looking at the video afterwards, like, wow, they were asking me stuff and I didn't answer them at all. And I feel like a jerk and would PM them and apologize. And but even if I saw the question, I don't think I would know what to say, or because it would be tough to be yapping about while trying to draw something or working on a page. So yeah, I'm with you. I don't know how well I would do with that.
Yeah,
with that whole process.
I've done some streaming before, but never on social media. It's always been Twitch Creative, where I've got a camera and a second screen, like the laptop, and I can look at the chat room and see different questions. And my issue is the same thing. You get caught up in what you're doing, and you're just questions go by, and it's like, oh crap, I should probably engage with these people but you get so focused on what you're doing. And that's why I'm thinking like it would be interesting to find some tutorials where people have maybe recorded the whole drawing, but then they can go back after and like, oh, so here I'm trying to do this or trying to do that, or this is where I ran into a problem and all that kind of thing. And I think that would be really interesting. Something that I find deceptive about the Photoshop tutorials, the color stuff that you were talking about, is so many of them are sped up.
Oh, yes.
Because,
yes.
I mean, as a lesson, really, you only want to kind of like learning for like 45 minutes, maybe an hour, before your brain starts to kind of go to mush. And so to do that, the whole painting, which was probably a 3 to 4 hour process, gets condensed. And so you have this, even though you understand, you can see that their mouse is zipping around like crazy, and you understand that this is a sped up video, it still leaves you with the impression that it happens much faster than it really does. And I've noticed that there's been a slight pushback the other way lately with some of my favorite artists, where they'll go in and they'll do real-time painting, and you'll see them kind of like move the mouse around, and they're not doing anything. Like they're aiming. And then it's like, then they put the stroke down. And you're like, wow, okay, that took a long time. Like there was some decision making there before he actually made that stroke, or she. And I find that is really fascinating, especially with inking, because like there's a lot of stuff out there that I've made the mistake of thinking like, this is, well, I've certainly been, I don't want to say duped. I've made the mistake of assuming something was traditional when it was digital. And I've also made the assumption like, wow, that's got a lot of energy. That's obviously drawn really fast. And then you see the artist draw, and you're like, no way. It's like the snail. It's like the snail pace of a brush going across the page. I'm just like, holy smoke! Like, I mean, then you do the calculations in your head, like this must take him forever. Right. And it's such an interesting window and, I guess, world that we live in, where you can kind of like be on Instagram or be on Facebook Live or YouTube or whatever, and just kind of like share that kind of stuff. Are you a fan of Nicholas Cole's work? Are you familiar with his stuff?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah. So his Patreon, you were mentioning color, and we were talking about color theory and learning and stuff like that. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention patreon.com/jellybots. Nicholas is putting out tutorials for patrons. So for anybody listening that is wanting to know about color theory and how to approach color, go check out Nicholas's Patreon for Jellybots, because it's so valuable, the kind of stuff that he communicates. He's also very consistent with what he's doing right now, and I think that's really cool too, because nothing more frustrating than finding a really cool tutorial where the person's done like one or two and then they just kind of vanish off the face of the earth. So it's nice to have that kind of stuff. But check out Nicholas's work; it's always really cool. I'm glad to hear you're a fan. I'm trying to spread the word about his work as much as I can.
Oh yeah, he's fantastic, and I was turned on to his work by an artist I met through the Twitter, John Lauren, who I think is a fantastic colorist, and he really helped me with a lot of the decision making on some pieces in the past that I had to hand into my agency, and so he mentioned Cole's work and told me that I needed to get on that and watch his work, and I'm glad he did. I'm beholden to him because I'm a huge fan.
Nice.
Still, I look at it and think I hate that guy because I cannot do that. What is going on here? But at the same time, it's that I need to stick with learning and watching this fellow, because he's really good, really great. I mean, they both are. John Lauren's a really, really good, fun colorist, but Nicholas is otherworldly and good stuff. Yeah,
I like John's work as well. Ready for the 6 degrees of Comics Coast to Coast?
Yes.
John Lauren, episode 275. For those that are interested in going back to listen.
Which I did. Yes.
Cool. While we're talking about other artists and stuff like that, what are the artists that you, I guess, were influenced by in your early years, like the formative years of being like kind of like a young, I don't know. Well, when did you really let's start with when did you really decide you wanted to be an artist?
Well, early on, I mean, and it's going to sound sentimental and goofy, but it really was my father. My father was an artist, and
Oh, cool.
and he was an artist that really I wish he had pursued a career in arts, and unfortunately he didn't during his time here. And but he would draw me things, and my earliest memory, one of my very earliest memory, was him drawing me Superman. And I just, I didn't know Superman was a comic. I just remember Superman from the black and white reruns, and he just drew me this picture, and I was just so turned on by it, just wanting to draw what my father just drew. And so that really, I just remember that moment. And afterwards, I think I was probably 6 or 7 and really wanting to draw and suddenly drawing all the time. And so early stuff that made me want to draw, or made me love drawing, I should say, was Chuck Jones and his animation, especially Rikki Tikki Tavi, which is something that I used to draw. I remember drawing quite a bit. And Mad Magazine, all the guys in Mad Magazine, I didn't do the comics at the young age. I did Mad Magazine, and those guys, Aragones and Davis and Drucker, made me love drawing. Weirdly enough, the Terry Gilliam animation and Monty Python reruns that I was watching at 8 or 9 really opened up another sort of, testing out weird drawings and loving the absurdity of that. And, it was that stuff. And I remember, seeing some of the, not Quentin Blake, oh my gosh, like the Shel Silverstein stuff, in his picture books, in his collection of poems, just really love the simplicity of his line, and not feeling intimidated by it and wanting to draw that stuff. And, so it was that and comic strips and, Saturday morning cartoons. It was a bunch of things that just made me love drawing any idea that I had in my head. And, cause I really liked coming up with stories. And so having this thing about drawing, it's like, well, I can draw what I'm thinking of this character or this story idea. So I was doing that at a young age. And Bloom County was probably the very first seeing that, Berkeley Breathitt and Bloom County, seeing that strip when I was 11, or 12, somewhere around there. That's when it was just, it was more than just enjoying drawing. I wanted to do that for the rest of my life. I mean,
nice.
Dramatic. It might be dramatic overstating, but it really was, because I loved everything about that strip, and it informed so much of my humor and my attitude. And, I was a goofy only child that, ran around yelling his head off and being dumb and having fun and loving absurd, silly stuff. And it was the perfect strip. And, if my stories were already crazy and wacky and my drawings were trying to match that. And there was that strip that, like, all right, a lot of it was over my head. But you could tell there was a snarkiness to it, an attitude about it. And it really did. It really make me want to take it seriously, even though you're 12 and how serious can you be? But I just remember it really making an impact on me that, when I grow up, this is what I want to do type of thing. So
I think a lot of us have that moment where you realize that it's a profession. Like, like there's the postman and the doctor and the lawyer, and there's also the guy that draws or girl that draws for a living. And I think that once you kind of realize that, there's that extra spark. It's like, no, wow, okay, now I have a goal. Like, now I have something that I can work towards. So did you do any art projects in high school or on in college?
in high school, I remember working on a strip in high school. I think it was called Wren Valley, and it was talking animal type stuff, but it was really had that attitude, that sort of, again, being that sort of arrogant and snarky type attitude that Bloom County had, that I worked on throughout high school. And I remember at one point sending it into my local paper, up in Gloucester, and not realizing that it's a syndicate, and you got to go through, you got to send your work to a syndicate, and that's how the paper gets a hold of it and all that. But I was just this young kid that drew, I think, 10 strips and stuck it in an envelope and sent it to the Times, and whoever responded was really nice enough to explain the whole process, and so I started to try and do that. But I was also a young idiot high schooler that would draw but then get distracted. So it was a lot of drawing strips that didn't go anywhere, but just was fun. Or I'd throw it in an art show at high school. I always felt like the oddball, where in high school there were a couple art shows and my classmates were throwing up these great still life paintings, or just to me, what they were trying to tell me was real art. And then there was my wall of, Far Side ripoff type one strip panel cartoons, or my attempt at being, Bloom County with my strip and all my silly drawings. But it was cool because someone ended up stealing all of them. And no, they didn't steal any of the paintings. So I was like, all right, that's kind of cool. Someone liked my stuff enough to steal my cartoon strips. And that made me feel good. But it was a lot of story ideas and writing and trying to do stuff through high school and never getting really anywhere with it, unfortunately, but spent a lot of time doing it.
Yeah. So when did you first get into comics, like professionally?
Professionally, this is I won't get into the whole thing, but in the 90s, the early 90s, a comic shop in Danvers, Mass started to put out comics, independent comics. I think this was 90, 91, 92, where everyone was putting out their own line of comics. And so I think they wanted to be sort of the New England comics, where they had success with the Tick at the time, and they wanted to do their own thing. And they were looking for artists. And I had just recently kind of got back into comics after being away for a little bit. And they hired me to do, the strip. And they had this cool little office studio in the back. And I was 20, 21. And I did this one strip that was a silly little thing that never came about. But then they had this idea, the guy that ran it and his partner, to do a comic based on a rock band, a local rock band that was making some noise at the time, simply because they were guys that dressed as girls, and they had their lead singer who was, I guess nowadays you'd call it transitioning, and they were kind of sort of a big deal as far as being gimmicky. And they wanted to do a comic based on them. And they asked me to do it because I was fast. And I really I met the guys and they were nice enough, but the whole idea of doing a comic based on a rock band of guys dressing as girls, I was like, man, I want to be Bill Sienkiewicz doing Electro Assassin or doing my Blue County strip, or, I don't, what is this, And so all these ideas were thrown around, and I just thought, all right, this is so ridiculous. Let's be tongue in cheek and make it more Rocky Horror. And the guys seemed to like that idea. And so we did it, and they kind of, they went on Jenny Jones and all this local stuff to promote the comic when it finally came out.
Awesome.
And I was excited for a day. It came out. It was in a giant print run. I don't even know how many it did, but I was like, oh, I got my own comic. And then I opened it up and just realized that this is ridiculous. Like I don't want this anymore. And the funny thing is, I would actually go into shops like in Wakefield and stuff, and buy them just so they wouldn't have any more. Because I toss them, and I'm not asking you to go find the issues, but it's it gets a little risky. There's some near nudity in it and all that stuff. It's not softcore or anything like that, even though I was trying to make it silly and I was pushed to make it a little bit more, sensual, which was just ridiculous. But there were moments in it that I had to show my girlfriend's parents, my girlfriend being so proud of me.
So proud, right.
That, hey, my boyfriend did a comic, and I'm like, wait, maybe you shouldn't show them. Please don't show them. And she did. And I don't think they really liked me much, maybe for a few days.
Yeah.
So it was an interesting intro into the world of, I guess, semi-pro comic making.
Yeah, I can identify. I had that issue once when I was, some older members of my family and parents and aunts and uncles and stuff like that were curious about what I was doing in animation, and I had just finished working on a John Kay video. Like a music video. I animated a little bit on it, but I was mostly production managing. But it was part of a large team that was working on it. Mm-hmm. But it's a John Kay video.
Yeah.
With like Kyle Gass and Jack Black, and it's like, like it's a little over the top, And
I would imagine.
And I'm just like, well, whatever. I've been sleeping and breathing this for the last couple months. I'll show everybody. And of course, as the room got silent, you realize the mistake that you've made in terms of the audience that this was meant for, and the audience it was not meant for.
Right.
So it's like from then on, it was a very selective. Like, so what are you working on? I was like, oh, this is a kid's cartoon. I could show you this. It's like, oh no, I'm working on a music video, and that would be as far as I would go. In some cases, it's funny how the different jobs that you end up working on and different projects, because ultimately you have to make a buck. Like you got to pay your rent. You have to, support your family with your pen and ink. And so sometimes the jobs are just not everything they're cracked up to be. And I don't find that that's talked about enough. Like we have a lot of people on the show where they talk about like how amazing this current thing is and the other thing. But we don't often get down to the nuts of like, so what was that first experience and how terrible was it? I think everybody's got that story. And for a lot of the artists that are listening that might be new, to the field, don't be afraid of doing stuff like that. I mean, you obviously, you still learned a lot from it. Also, ingenious strategy of going and buying them from the local comic place. I thought that was pretty clever.
I freaked out. I really did.
That's an NBC sitcom moment, right? Like you're rushing in and out of all these comic shops.
Yeah, pretty. Well, it got a little crazy, and my friend was like, "What are you doing? It's not like we're doing image numbers, man. Don't worry about it." At the time, and I'm like, still, it's enough. It's enough to make me upset.
Yeah.
And so, I was pretty much spending the money I made working on that comic, buying some of the issues and getting rid of them. So
yeah. So these days, we're kind of in the throes of Inktober. Are you participating?
I did one. I'd love to do more. I'd love to do more personal stuff. I'm just catching up on finishing up my commitment on Fruit Ninjas, where I'm a few pages away. Fell a little behind, caught up but the last few weeks have been nothing but driving Nate crazy with are you working on it? I'm like, I'm getting it to you. honest, I swear you'll have it by 11. And so it's been nothing but just finishing up those comics for the last couple of weeks.
Like that,
deadlines and stuff. But I'd love to.
Yeah. I've talked to a number of other artists that have done it previously and are not this year on purpose because it's just they've got too much other things going on, which is good. I mean, it's a good problem to have. I mean, if you're bumming around and you've got like, well, I got nothing else better to do, I might as well do Inktober. Like that's not exactly good either if you're a professional artist, right? Like you don't want that problem. But I'm also finding too that a lot of the choices, and I'm doing my best to support those choices too, by just kind of messaging friends and stuff, is that people are just overworked. Like they've got so much on their plate trying to make it as an independent artist that they're like, well, there's all these really cool people that are participating in Inktober, and it's like, but like I could do that, but that's just like 2 hours a day that I just don't have, or I can't give, or I'd have to sacrifice sleep. And I think that it's just as important to make that decision to not participate as it is to participate, depending on what other responsibilities you've got going on. So I'm glad to hear that the last comic for Fruit Ninja, though, is coming together. That's going to be it's going to be exciting, I think, for people. I love how, to go all the way back to the covers that we mentioned earlier, I like how the covers kind of tell you what to expect. Mm-hmm. In terms of what's going to be inside. Like, there's a lot of silliness. It's very cartoony. And it's funny that you mentioned Chuck Jones and some of your other influences, because I absolutely pick up on Chuck Jones now that you've mentioned that in your work. Just in terms of the animation-esque, like the classical Warner Brothers kind of movement to everything, and the silliness. It's Fruit Ninja, and even just your personal work, like your Tumblr blog, where you've got pictures of pigs and Harry Potter sticking a wand up a troll's nose, and like all that kind of stuff is just kind of like you said, like really wonky, kind of over the top, and the kind of things that you'd see in a Bugs Bunny villain, or one of those larger pieces that Chuck would have done with like Broomhilda or the opera pieces and stuff like that, with like the auxiliary characters are just like way over the top, like this crazy fat horse with these teeny tiny little hooves and all that kind of stuff, like the proportions. I've been following your work online for quite some time. I'm a fan. And
thank you, man.
No problem, man. Call it like I see it. And I'm glad that you've got some professional stuff going on. It's fantastic to see. We're actually running, unfortunately, low on time, so I need to kind of push into the one question that Matt would normally butt in and ask, but I will do it for him. And that is, who are the artists that you would like to see thrown under the bus? I mean, interviewed on this show.
I really like. He's gonna kick me if I'm butchering his name. Donald DeLay, Donald DeLay. Donald DeLay, yeah. Donald DeLay, yes. I've been talking with him for a while, and to see the sort of jumps that he's made in his artwork. When I was first introduced to his artwork to now, to the book that he's working on with, I think it's Justin Jordan, and it's just it's great to see him doing so well with it, because we would have conversations about trying to make that break, and I would love to hear him talk about just sort of that, what he goes through, and I think he's got a big personality, I think, and I think people would really enjoy listening to him. So I think he would be really cool. To be on there.
Yeah, sounds like a plan. We'll have to have him back on, because it was episode 224 when we had Don.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know he was on that.
No, that's fine. It's just...
my gosh, now I feel like a jerk.
No, it's not. It's not at all. No, not at all. I think it just speaks to all the more reason to have him back on. Because it's been a long time, because we're talking, like, we generally get about 50 episodes out a year. There's a couple of holidays where we take the week off and whatnot. So 224 would have been at least 2 years ago. I want to say just about 2 years ago, as a matter of fact. We'll have to reach out to Donald and see what he's up to and bring him back on the show. Thanks for the recommendation. I didn't know that he had a new thing going on, actually. That's good to know.
Yeah, it's exciting to see, and he's great, and I don't know. I know him. That's why I figured I'd give him give the shout out there. Cool. You should have Bill Sienkiewicz and Frank Miller. I mean, of course, that's boring. Why would I say those things? And, Jeff Smith. Have you heard of Jeff Smith? He's got this great new book called Bone. The kids are really digging it.
Oh yeah, I heard about that one.
So I figured I'd throw out. No,
it's part of the fun, right? I mean, like, you've taken the time out of your day to come here. It's all the more fun to take a friend and say, hey, by the way, they're coming for you.
Yes,
you got to do the show. Dude, thank you so much for being on Comics Coast to Coast. I really appreciate it. Where can people find your work online, and like what social media do you want to point people towards?
Well, on the Twitter and on the Instagram, it's just SB71, ESSBEE 71, and sonofajoe.com is my website, personal website, and you can also see my work at the Bright Agency, the agency that represents me. I have a portfolio there as well. So, or come be my friend in Facebook and we can like talk about stuff, or maybe not. I don't know. So,
Fantastic.
Show me kids' pictures or something. I don't know, but yeah, those are the main things. If you're interested in checking out my work.
No, I do absolutely. I think everybody should go and check it out, and check out the Instagram feed. I think that's probably one of my favorite ways to follow artists right now.
That's my favorite way. Yeah, actually, it's I prefer it over, Deviant or or Twitter or anything like that.
It's image based. It's in the palm of your hand. It's full screen as you scroll. Like you don't have to click on anything. You just kind of move your thumb and just kind of goes by. No, I'm there. I like it too. Well, my name is Joel Duggan. You can find everything that I'm doing at joelduggan.com. While you're out there on the interwebs, and if you happen to perk your ears a little bit when you heard Rob Momart's name earlier, that's because we're running a Kickstarter right now. So Forge Publishing is my publishing company, and Ink Tank by Rob Momarts is in the first few days of its Kickstarter campaign over at forgepublishing.com/inktank. That will take you right to Kickstarter. We just hit 20% funded today, which is phenomenal. So I really, really want to take a moment to thank everybody that's been coming out to support Rob and the book. It's going to be a huge collection of a lot of his Inktober drawings, actually, but he's also got some fantasy stuff, some personal IP things that he's been working on. He's also got permission from some of his clients to put in some cool game art that's in there as well. So check out Ink Tank at forgepublishing.com/inktank. And for this show, you can go to comicscoasttocoast.com. You can also go to patreon.com/comicsc2c. If you find value in the show and you want to give a little bit of value back, then join the Patreon and help us make more comic interviews. Thanks so much again for being on the show. Scott, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, sir. I've had a blast. Thank you.
And you will see me and hopefully Brian Dunaway and the ailing Matt the Wad from their flus and allergic reactions and whatever plague has come down on them next week when we actually get a chance to talk to Rob Momarts. So see you then.
This show is part of the Frog Pants Network. Get more at frogpants.com.